Is AI taking over our creative processes, or is it empowering us to new heights? Today, we're diving deep into how humans and AI collaborate.
We'll explore how AI can enhance creativity and decision making, and we'll discuss potential risks and challenges of over reliance on AI.
We'll also tackle how AI is empowering us and how to find a balance before dependency.
Welcome to the Blue Hour, a weekly chat on the growing tech space with a special focus on the impact of AI and blockchain on the future of this little marble floating through outer space.
I like the idea of a little marble floating through space because it reminds me of Carl Sagan. You ever read any Carl Sagan?
No, but I feel like I've know enough people who've read them that I've just taken it in through
Word.
osmosis. Yeah,
So you know who he obviously you know who he is, yeah. Just like
yeah.
he has a book called The Pale Blue Dot, which was written after the original moon mission, taking a photo of Earth as it had traveled, and it was unexpectedly impactful, which is kind of cool. Good book, short read, but pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that line.
I've heard some cool things about astronauts having like crazy reactions to seeing the Earth from outer space. It's got to be crazy.
Me too.
It gives you a completely different perspective of where we live, which is wild.
I know it's amazing to think that everybody. Like, I think that in the book, he really makes a point. But one of the many points is really just that everybody you've ever known, everything you've ever experienced, and everything you've ever really seen or touched is on that little tiny, distant piece of, rock because it looks so distant and so cool. I don't know. It's a fascinating idea. Maybe I can read the Eric Wall tweet from yesterday or 2 days ago. I thought it was great. He's just like a crypto guy, he's an influencer. He's a smart guy in space. I really like his writing. He's kind of a troll, to be honest with you, but he's really into this. I mean, he's like, I don't know how else to explain it. He's just like, or I guess you could say he's a shit poster. That's the best way to say it, probably.
They're close relatives. Like everybody who has a
Yeah,
big following mostly posts things that seem like it's trolling or shit posting or some sort of combination
yeah,
of the two.
yeah. Actually, he has 120,000 followers, kind of legit. But he had written just like he writes a lot of stream of consciousness stuff. He had written, if you don't think AGI is possible, and AGI is artificial general intelligence, which has multiple definitions, but ultimately that means, from what I could find, like a consensus definition on Wikipedia was really just that it means that artificial intelligence or AI can process things that humans and animals can currently, right? So what he had said is, quote, if you don't think that AGI is possible, and effectively that that AGI, that it is impossible for true intelligence and sentience to emerge from circuit boards, it's important to remind yourself that we emerge from a rock spinning in space at a particular temperature. And I think that you see a lot of people who are like, no, it's impossible, no, it's not intelligent, no, this and that. And it's like, dude, this is really, really impressive. I'm using it constantly when it comes to ChatGPT specifically, and then sort of the Microsoft Bing version, which is technically, it won't allow itself to tell you that it's ChatGPT derived. It like does this weird like word salad about the fact that it's Microsoft's technology, but I think it's pretty well publicized that it's a derivative of ChatGPT 4. But nonetheless, when you're interacting with that, there is certainly like a sense of something is different here.
Yeah,
And I just love this idea because it's like, I mean, it's fun to remind yourself of that.
yeah. I mean, the
It's
idea
cool.
of an AGI is a program that can do the job of a human better than a human and discover things that humans can't, which is exciting for things like medical research or developing, novel things or solving huge complex problems. Also kind of scary for people who feel like their job is their life. But
Yeah,
it is the concept. It's something I've been playing around with a lot more in my head is what does it look like if an AI model actually has like goals and feelings and can experience stuff, which I
yeah.
think when I first was thinking of it, was like that's impossible. But the more and more I think about it, it doesn't seem as impossible.
Yeah, you had asked an interesting question yesterday because you've been querying it so much, and you're like, I wonder if there's a point at which it'll get frustrated with having to trying to explain this to me. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wow, that's an interesting question. I have no
Yeah.
idea. I somehow doubt it because then I was thinking later in the day about how many hundreds of thousands of queries it's getting over the course of single hours throughout the day, and so it's probably just, I don't really know, but my assumption is like, even though it might feel like you're doing a lot, there still are probably other things that are pinging the API, for example, at just such a massive rate.
It's weird too, just the idea of if an AGI was capable, if we're capable of having an AGI, what would its experience be like? Because humans are very tied into, you don't want to be overworked, frustrated. Like the idea of harm being inflicted on other humans is huge in society. Will there be things that actually matter to an AGI? Will be fascinating if we ever get there, or when we get there. Uh,
That's so interesting.
I know it's crazy. It's
Jeez.
fun to play with. But I got some topics we can get into along that same thread we're talking about, touching on like AI collaboration and human AI interaction, and like how we collaborate with AI now, what it means for the future. There's been so much development happening the last like 8 months that it's a hot topic and one that I think will be fun to play around with. Let's start off with what does effective collaboration between humans and AI look like? For me personally, that is like doing things that I would normally do through actions with AI, which say it's writing a piece of content, marketing content that I have to do for my job. It would be using that as a to make it easier and better, the content better and easier for me faster. For like day-to-day stuff, planning, say I'm planning a birthday party, using ChatGPT or an AI service to be like, I'm planning a birthday party. Here are some of the things I want. Can you give me ideas and feedback on what I should do? Have it print out and just make it faster than me sitting there doing it all by myself, almost like a brainstorming partner.
I guess I have a question for you. Do you think that the breadth of information that it has is limited? So, am I understanding it correctly in that if you ask it for that specific example of birthday party, is it querying itself and its massive data set for all of the examples of birthday party activities, and then it's providing you with sort of like a synthesized short list of things based on the way that you ask the question and the things that you specifically said are important to you?
Yeah.
And
So,
how is it answering your question? You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't know the perfect answer, but I have an answer, which is it's completely trained on data sets. So it has a lot of data, some of it taken from the internet, where it can go through and source that information. But it's also trained on how it makes decisions. So it's a reasoning engine, which means giving it context allows it to take whatever data it was trained on in its data sets, which is probably some blog posts and articles and maybe books about birthdays and shit like that. And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's important that it's a pool party and it's for either a male or female in the US and they're more interested in, spending time with people rather than getting presents. And it takes that and filters it through however it does its own reasoning. And then it spits out something that sounds very, if you're asking for advice generally, it's going to take from its training data, like how to give the best guide or plan for something. And then it's going to put it through that. So there's like a bunch of different sort of levels that it'll go through. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know exactly. I started doing some research on how it pulls information, like what those data sets are that it was trained on. I didn't get fully deep down. For the purposes I'm using it, it's not crazy important because it works really well. But
Yeah. You
working
definitely
on
answered my question. I don't really necessarily mean like which data sets. Like that's something I've looked into a little bit, and I think that things like and then we were talking recently about um, what did you call it? Pinpointing or sharpening or something?
fine tuning.
Fine tuning, exactly. So
Yeah.
you can fine tune it to make it such that it either has a specific voice that it uses, and you use the example of like British slang, or you can make it such that the data set that you provide to it is really specific. So it's like internal engineering processes that are already in existence on the team, and our CTO and our VP of engineering and our 10 founding engineers or whatever all understand inherently, but now we're a 250 engineering team, and we need to make sure that that information is really available more readily. So we're going to provide it with a data set of all of the questions and answers that people ask internally, and then we're going to make it such that this bot can answer and read such that it provides based on like keywords or specific questions that people are like querying it with to provide those answers without having to actually specifically ping somebody on your internal tooling or whatever. Interesting.
Yeah, fine tuning's cool. It sounds kind of crazy, and it was what I was doing. I was researching a lot end of last year, early this year, because I was like, I would love to fine tune a model for a very specific use case. And then I
Yeah.
realized that you can do 99% of the stuff that I want to do just by prompt engineering. But the one takeaway I have from it is like if you were to fine tune a model, you just take the API that OpenAI has and you send it a bunch of questions and answers that it learns based off of. So that's kind of the data
Okay.
set part. And if we gave it 100,000 questions, they were just all questions from every field and everything, but the answer for each one was hamburger. And then you fine
Yeah.
tuned the set with that. And then you went to this model and you asked it a question like, what day is it today? It would just say hamburger because it'd be trained to answer every question with hamburger. So
Yeah.
you have to you have to train these models with accurate information, which is what makes them better. Really cool for business use cases. Not
Yeah.
great if you're just blindly trusting an AI, not knowing what it's the data set that it's trained on, which is super interesting.
Yeah, actually, I saw an example of this. I think that the company's called Notif. Oh, Notify. Notifi. It's a crypto project on Ethereum that I listened to an interview with the founder this week, and it was interesting. He was talking about how they provide notifications effectively for on-chain actions, and so they allow for you to aggregate all of the actions that happen on-chain into a single sort of interface. Pretty interesting. But they also built, I think, in an effort to sort of like swoop up users and like ride the trend that is like everybody talking about ChatGPT. They built a bot that they then fine tuned and they made it such that the answers are like witty and sarcastic because they think that it's more engaging for people to use a tool that's sarcastic, and
Yeah.
they want it to like be a little bit snappy with you intentionally. And they're like, it's more fun if you talk to somebody who's like that. I think that that's like kind of a stretch. Sarcasm can be kind of nasty, but I had this conversation with somebody recently. So like I have like a little bit of an opinion on sarcasm in general, but sarcasm's fun. Humor. It's humorous, I guess is the point. Maybe more
Yeah.
so than sarcasm. Maybe he was just like misspeaking. English is not his native language, so I haven't played with it. I like was looking at it and like I just had I didn't have a wallet set up in that browser because I've been using Edge, and Edge has this version in Bing of ChatGPT 4 that allows for you to query, and it has a sliding scale of using it in a way that's succinct and quick or something like that. And then it also has
Yeah.
relaxed and creative, and then it has a normal in the center. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought that training it with like a certain tone of voice was interesting, and that came up this
It
week as
is.
well.
I think there's going to be really cool things that happen with fine-tuned models that respond in ways that people react to differently. And there will
Yeah.
be a lot of, if you ever seen the movie uh Her, possibly, it's the one where Joaquin Phoenix is dating like a closed source operating system that's voiced by Scarlett Johansson, but it's basically an AI on his phone that he is in a
Wow.
relationship with and then falls in love with. But that's
I
like,
haven't seen it, but I heard of it.
yeah, that's the one use case that'll come out for sure. I use Midjourney, which is an AI image generator. When you go in there, you just see prompt after prompt of people imagining different like sexual partners for the most part. Like they want to see like their
Wow.
version of what they think a hot guy is or their version of what they think a hot girl is. And that's like the first thing people start generating on there. So I think
God,
you will
that's
see those,
crazy.
but it'll be fun to see what that leads to with the way models are trained to respond to people. Because you'll have very cool things where it could feel like you're talking to you'll just have cool opportunities. People have done cool things with you can ask a question to Plato and it'll respond with it'll
That's cool.
learn based on data from all Plato's writings and things written about Plato and the voice that they think that Plato's in, which is cool. But
That's
I want to go back
amazing.
to the Microsoft Edge thing because I haven't played with it much and figure out what kind of experience has been because Microsoft invested a bunch in OpenAI and through that they got access to put some of this reasoning engine into the Edge browser. So I haven't played with it, but what do you think of it so far? And kind of what's been cool about it?
Yeah, it's yeah. There's a little bit of friction for me personally because I've been an Apple and Mac guy for my entire life, like my whole since 2004, so a very long time now. So there's a little bit of friction signing up. Like I don't have a Microsoft user stuff. Like I need that. So ultimately, it was really really simple. The only reason that I really even knew to look into it is because I don't pay for OpenAI's services. Like I think it's like $20 a month or whatever. And I watched a lecture by this guy Sebastian Bubrick, or B-U-B, or no R. I'm sorry, Sebastian Bubeck, a French guy. He's been a professor at different places. He's a brilliant mind in this space, and he's been very critical of the idea that AGI is sort of here and sort of like it's very very interesting. But he had in this talk, he really talks about like there's a spark of it here, like this is happening, and he's like sort of changing his sort of like thesis. Really interesting. He just was really the only thing that I written down from him is like, beware of the surprises that come from a trillion dimensional space. So it just allows for like so much parallel processing in real time that it's just like so impossible. It is impossible for us to understand what that possibly can like what can come after that. So I
Yeah.
thought it was interesting, thought provoking. And he had mentioned that Bing has this engine that's built into it. I didn't realize that until I heard the talk. So I just went in and I've been using it a little bit. It's really great that it provides sources for its answers, right? So I was looking into something specific about locomotives, like how the train systems in the United States were built. And I just think that trains are cool. I like to travel by train sometimes. It's a fascinating, like the advent of the train took a 2 week ride from New York to Chicago and made it a 2 day ride, and now it's
Yeah.
a 3 hour ride, right, on the by plane. And so very, very, very interesting, sort of the network of the railway in the United States is being parallel to sort of the advent of the internet and information transfers. So I was thinking about that, and it was providing me with resources that I was citing in the answers. So I think that to me is really exciting because oftentimes I'm
Yeah.
very interested in what the sources are. So that was like the big thing that stands out to me, honestly.
Yeah, I
Pretty
think
cool.
the
Yeah.
sources, having sources is huge because one of the problems with just straight up using a chat GPT is the model can lie to you. I mean, it's meant to make it look like it's giving you the best answer possible. And you can't just take it at, especially if it's something important. And in the future, if there's more AI companies doing more things and you're using different softwares, you have to have some sort of trust built in that it's not being manipulated and that you're not just
Yeah.
taking the answers at face value. So it's a cool step forward for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I've messed with it and like taken like the skeptical weird lens that I have and like queried it a lot. And there are a lot of grammatical errors, and I often like capitalization errors. And I always am like, well, how do you making how? And I'll ask it in like specific reference to like the beginning of a paragraph or something. I'll say, why did you spell it this way, or why did you use this comma there? And it'll say, oh, that was a typo. And it's like, what do you mean
Yeah.
it's a typo? How do you have typos? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Well, if it's
So I think
trained
things like
on,
that is really
yeah, if it's trained on
typos.
things it's finding and people made errors in there, it's just
Yeah,
using that data it knows, which is pretty
exactly.
funny. Yeah.
So it sort of
There's a,
shows like the limit, like there's like an upper limit of its perfection, obviously.
it's cool, man.
The
I
only other
have
thing I want, like this question specifically, like I think that it's worth noting prompt engineering because when I had asked how do you elicit the response for something like the birthday party example, you then listed like pool party, the gender of the person, the fact that they enjoy presence of people or gifts. Like those are really nuanced ideas that it's not necessarily intuitive to provide all of that data or actually like context in this example
yeah.
to the chat bot. Like it's easy to be like, what should I do for a birthday? And like so like
That's
it's
the
I
yeah.
guess maybe the point is like I want you to talk about how like you have come to learn to provide it with like the relevant info, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not that intuitive for me to do that.
I think of it when you're writing a prompt for specifically for ChatGPT, is it's almost like an intern who's you hired that is very qualified but doesn't know a lot of the things. Like they're able to figure it out, but they need all this context and all this information. Otherwise, they're not going to do a good job. So I pretty much go into every prompt with like, I need to do more legwork than my mind wants me to because I want it to just be like Google, where I Google something, the answer is kind of I have to search for the answer. Instead, you have to give it a lot of context and information up front to get exactly what you want, or not even exactly what you want, because it'll give you a better version of what you want, which is really cool. But
Exactly.
you
Yes.
really have to think about, for instance, I mean, I use it a lot for content, so I have to give it the amount of characters, things I know that I don't want. If I don't want hashtags in something, I have to explicitly ask for it. If I write a certain way, I need to figure out how to describe the way I write. If it's like succinct, professional, straight to the point, takes a strong stance, says something controversial, add that into it. You can also do stuff like make sure there's no grammatical errors if it's something that you want written,
Mm,
because sometimes it actually needs that context, almost like an intern
oh,
who's going to
interesting.
make you could just say
Huh.
proofread, like you're talking to an intern and be like, proofread for grammatical errors. Yeah, it's
I
kind of
didn't mean to
weird to
interrupt
treat it like
you.
a human, but it's helped me a
Yeah.
lot with getting the most possible out of it.
Yeah, I know it's a really good point. I don't really think about it that way, but I think it's probably more effective too. It's probably more realistic to get better answers from it that way. I know that we talk a lot about prompt engineering in like in the last episode, but also
Yeah.
just in general, we talk a ton about prompt engineering and getting the best responses from it. It's something that yeah we'll continue to talk about. It's absolutely fascinating. It just like allows for you to use it much in terms of like how can it enhance like how do you effectively collaborate with it. Prompt engineering is a
Yeah,
massively big part of that.
definitely. I want to
So
touch
then
a
I know
little
that we got
bit.
yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Only the last thing that I want to touch on is like how it's empowering us and finding a dependency or a balance between the dependency on AI and actually augmenting or like amplifying the things that humans do. So there's
Yeah.
one big thing that's come out in the past 2 weeks called Auto GPT. There's some people working on this, which is basically at the core of what it is they're having AI models run against each other using GPT-4, which means that it's an AI talking to another AI, having it do things and prompting it, which is cool for people who are experimenting, but also starts to go down the route of taking humans out of the equation. So I think
Exactly.
AI software we all enjoy, and it's been very cool to start playing around with how it can enhance things that humans already do. I don't think creating models that have to work with one another without humans even really being involved is where we need to be right now. There's so much in the just the basic processes we do day to day that we haven't dug into that I think it can improve a lot. It can make a lot of people's lives easier, but I think moving too fast is a little bit of a problem. And it seems like
Mhm.
people are very quick to jump the shark, and all they want to do is try and figure out how to make two AIs make each other better, which is problematic. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't really honestly thought that much about it until you popped it in here for discussion today. To be completely honest, I wasn't aware that it was happening. Do you think that there's anything wrong with the idea that it's getting better like simultaneously while people are using it? Like I think of like real world examples of like paired programming is a really good way to enhance the way that you write code. And ultimately, you can do paired programming with something like ChatGPT. It just allows people in a remote world, or even in a world where you live in a place that's rural and you don't have anybody else in your household who does code. It allows for you to have a paired programming partner immediately. And then also things like legal indexing. Like when I was in law, like when we were in college, I didn't go to law school. I just almost said that. But when we were in college and I was working at that law firm across the bridge, I'd go over there and one of my biggest projects that I like physically helped them index these books, these like binders full of files, and like built this entire indexing system. Which is really simple. There are lots of different examples of things like that. In the Peace Corps, I'd written all these binders, and the binders then sit on a shelf. There's nothing digitized about them. But ultimately, if you could digitize those things somehow, that allows for you to query them and ultimately get that information much easier. And actually, you don't even need to necessarily like index it in a way that's really effective. You could just sort of input that information. So I'm not exactly sure how that step would be, making the digital or the physical into digital, but then allow for ChatGPT to ultimately comprehend, or not comprehend, but ultimately digest all of that information raw. And then you could just ask it questions about it, and then it would ultimately elicit responses with that in reference. So I
Yeah.
think of use cases like that. Do you think so? Those things are like use cases of humans interacting with it. I assume if we have AI conversations happening simultaneously in different rooms, it just makes the human AI conversations more effective, right? Like, what's the issue that you see? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, the issue I see is just creating something that gets too interesting too fast. Concept of digitizing physical documents, you could do with just the base model of AIs we have now. It's relatively new. The GPT, like the way Chat GPT came out with the model it was on, and then GPT-4 are very cool. And there's just not enough people building on it to build everything that's possible. So you could do things like picture to database, where you take pictures of these things or even scan them. It turns it into documents that you can have proofread or summarized and you can query. You don't need multiple, they call them agents now. So an AI working with an AI, or they're
That's
called
fucked up, dude. Do you
AI
ever seen the
agents.
Matrix?
Yeah, it's a little weird, but
What the fuck?
and people
The
are
Matrix, dude, is right out of the movies.
yeah. You don't need agents working with agents yet. We need better solutions for things like this, where humans are doing things that are repetitive, take a lot of time that we can make way faster. We can also make access to information way easier. And there's so many base level cases for all jobs that I think people could build that they're not. And some of the smart people in the space are just so excited about the tech that they're focusing on this. how can we make the models crazier and crazier and learn faster, and how do they interact with each other? Uh, there's a
Yeah.
balance there that my take on it is you could spend 2 to 3 years of just having people build with the base level of GPT-4 now, utilizing it. There's GPUs are like the processing units for what it takes to actually run these programs can get expensive. And as we scale, it's going to be harder and harder to have those. So there's plenty of time, I think, before we start digging into these agent versus agent stuff.
Interesting.
Not that anybody will listen to me or take my advice, but just
Well, I think,
my take.
I guess, like, is the point that you're making that the smartest people are focused on agent to agent when in reality they should be focused on more mass adopt, like larger adoption,
Yeah.
and that there aren't enough people working on the adoption side, and that the agent to agent side isn't nearly as important. So those people should be spending their time sort of getting this in front of more people.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, adoption and education. Like, I
yeah,
watched an interview with Sam Altman where he was like, I'm not even that good of a prompt engineer. And he mentioned that the Chat GPT product isn't even that great. He was like, it breaks, it goes down. It's not a perfect product.
yeah,
Like, we haven't figured out these basic use case. The co-founder of the biggest company isn't a good prompt engineer yet. Like, we haven't solved for that,
that's amazing.
which is,
Yeah, exactly. That's what Bubik said as well. A Sebastian guy. He had said mathematician, and he was in a room of, like, the lecture hall was all these mathematicians, I guess, and he was saying that simple arithmetic, it messes up. There are problems with the simple arithmetic sometimes,
yeah.
and it will just say it's a typo, which is fascinating. It's the same thing with grammar stuff. I'm not a mathematician. I studied English and that sort of thing. So, like, that's what stands out to me. But apparently for mathematicians, it's like that's what stands out to them. It's fascinating. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think there's a moral issue with having agent versus agent, or is it just a use of time?
Morality's so fluid.
Yeah, no.
Who am I?
Fluid,
Who,
fluid.
who am I to judge? But it's there.
No doubt. I thought that was your point, though. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think we should be fucking with it, man. I don't know. I mean, there will probably be some sort of embargo, or the APIs will be closed off a little bit to some of this stuff, or they'll just rate limit it so that you can't run for a month straight agent versus agent while they're just querying. And it's called tokens when you make calls to the OpenAI API. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter what my moral take is on it, but I would say morally, I don't know, but personally, my gut feeling is that it's a little too early, and we we need to make it so that it would be very easy for the people that we know who don't use AI to use it and get value out of it. And people are going to do that, but question is who? Yeah,
Should be you, man.
yeah, it could be you. Who
Should
knows?
be. Well, if it's me, it would be us.
Yeah,
If it's you, you understand this better.
yeah. I mean, that's most I have to
Yeah,
say about it. I'm
I
sure
love
we'll
it.
have
Yeah,
ample opportunity to talk more about it because the space is so crazy right now.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. You have any closing thoughts on it?
No, it's exciting. I'm still using it. My instinct is to use it in just the browser that I use every day, which happens to be Firefox and not Bing inside of, like, an Edge browser. But, like, sometimes I'll pop in there if I have things that I want to reference first, like different pieces of writing that I'm working on, and so that allows me to cite things, which is really helpful just to confirm that it's not sort of like just a typo.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I'm excited to continue to use it. I think if you as a power user, I'm definitely less of a user of it than you are. But, like, in comparison, some people, like, I've been hanging out with some random people and just sort of bringing it up at a high level, and a lot of people have no idea, or, like, they know but they don't think it'd be useful for them, which I think is inherently incorrect.
yeah. Well, it's because it's hard to use. That's the thing.
Yeah, I
Hard to use.
guess so. I don't know. I guess that maybe it, like, harkens back to, like, the internet native idea. I don't know, because I think that these are young people, and I'm just surprised that they think it'd be difficult to use it to chat. It's just literally, it's like chatting with somebody.
Yeah,
Um,
it's crazy.
I
Um,
constantly ask it questions, like, constantly.
yeah,
Also with these plugins, like, I know that you have access to some plugins. I don't have any access to plugins, so they don't pay for it. But, like, those are fascinating. You're like, book flights, confirm a reservation, like, ask it, like, I want to go to an Italian restaurant in the East Village on Thursday night. What are my options? And it'll, like, provide a list of them, and then it'll also provide links through Resi or Open Table or whatever, so you can literally click, and then it like makes the reservation for you. It's crazy.
yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think paying the $20 for GPD Plus, and also they send you emails where you can sign up for early access to features, which I've been doing. This is super helpful, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can do a whole nother thing about plugins at some point.
No
Uh,
doubt. Yeah. Especially once I get some access.
yeah, it's kind of chilly in here though. I think I need a hot take. Oh my god, it's so cold.
My hot take is really silly, but I really miss voicemails. Eric has the best voicemail I've ever heard. I wish we could play it out loud for you, but every time I call Eric and it goes to voicemail, um, it's like, "Hello, you've reached the voicemail box of Eric Hellstrom. If you're here for the balloon party, press 1. If you're here for the FedEx, if you're here to drop off a physical package, press 2. If you're here to drop off a digital package, press 3." It's like goes
Yeah.
on to like 9. It's so funny.
Yeah, the funniest part is there's a 10, which means you'd have to press 1 and 0. It's a really long voicemail, but it just makes no sense, and it was very fun for me
It's
to
so
record.
funny, dude. Oh
Yeah.
my god, I've done that for a few years. And when it goes on and I get your voicemail, I try to leave you voicemails. So I'll like throw it on speaker and do something or whatever. And it's funny. It's really funny, but also it's fun to like leave voicemails for people. I feel like not really a lost art, but it's fun. Like I miss I don't know, texting is cool, I guess. And like it's fun to be like silly over text, I guess, and use GIFs. I love GIFs, but there's nothing quite like voicemails.
Yeah.
I love them. So that's my hot take. Eric's got the best voicemail in the land.
Appreciate it, man. That's high praise.
Yeah. What do you got?
My hot take's one that I know you're gonna like. It's cooking is cool. Cooking while listening to music is like the jam. My partner and I made something new last night. I grew up eating pork tenderloin, but I don't think I've ever really cooked it by myself.
Cool.
And so we cooked a pork tenderloin, and we made like, what do we have on the sides? Like carrots, potatoes, a salad. But it was nice, and we spent 45 minutes, an hour listening to music, cooking. Part of while I was cooking, we were sitting in the backyard chilling. It's delightful. I think people get stuck in these habits, especially when you live in the city, of eating out or making food fast and not enjoying the process or like sitting in it. And it's fun to spend an hour plus cooking. So I'd
So
take
true.
fucking do it, dude.
Love that. Love that take. The one thing I'll say in addition to that is like if you make a one night or like one night a month or whatever it is, a date night, then you like feel less. If you're able to plan ahead, I think that's my big thing is planning ahead. It makes it so
Planning
much
ahead's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that, man. I love that pork tenderloin.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, awesome. All right, another week down. That's episode 12. Well done.
Yeah, man. Blue Hour, thanks for coming. Thanks to Josiah Soren. He does our intro, outro music. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Josiah. We appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Well, we will see you next week, huh?
That's right. Absolutely. We got some new stuff for you. Ciao.
Yeah, bye.